How's everybody doing? First week of April. Crazy to think we're already doing this. Open water season. Going to get these open water videos going here. Get some fishing reports. Give you some tips. First off, happy Easter, everybody. Hopefully you're enjoying it with family and friends. We got a ham on the smoker. We're going to have a double smoked ham today. Ham courtesy of an awesome place that I work, Clam Outdoors. Thank you to Clam for giving me that Easter ham every year. We love it. So that's on the smoker. Hopefully we're enjoying our day. Beautiful weather here. I'm in central Minnesota. I know everyone that watches these videos are probably seeing the same weather I am. It is amazing. It's going to be in the mid 70s today. We were on the water yesterday as well as during the week checking things. We had ice out early this year and we were chasing fish. We were in the water in our boat in March, not catching a pile of fish right away, but we did the last couple days out. So I wanted to talk about what's working, talk about some of the water temps, some of the trends I'm seeing. I'm getting inundated with messages and questions on Facebook, on my social media platforms, and email asking about where are we catching our fish, what depths, what are the water temperatures, what are we using. Some anglers are out there struggling, as did we. We've struggled. We had to hit multiple spots before we found productive patterns. But I'll talk about some of the things that work for us, and then we'll kick off this open water weekly fishing report series here the first week of April, targeting crappies. So we hit a variety of lakes, found water temps everywhere from like 41 degrees up to 50-ish degrees surface temp. And we fished lakes all the way from 100 acres all the way to the infamous Lake Minnetonka. Main Lake Tonka, this is a question I get asked. Main Lake Tonka is at like 42 to 44 degrees surface temp, and this was yesterday when it got warm and hot. That water's still cold. It's, even though it looks beautiful out and we're out in shorts and t-shirts, that water is cold. If you don't believe me, walk through it at the boat launch when you're pushing your boat in the water. Hop in there and you'll see how cold your feet get quick. So it's still pretty cold. We checked a lot of spots, Main Lake. There are some weeds still existing. There were some green weeds that held through all the winter time. We are not finding piles of fish staging and biting on these Main Lake spots yet. We are marking some fish. We picked some up, but I think you want to find that warmest water. Spring is so critical on water temperature. You're trying to find that warmest water, and that generally right away, at least now when we get these warmer sunny days, is going to be in these boat channels, back in these bays, protected bays, north bays, anything that has wood around it possibly to absorb some of the warmth. Harder bottom, sandy bottom, rocky bottom generally is colder. So I'm looking for dirtier water, warmer water, and you can find some fish that are active. I plan on targeting more fish Main Lake as these next week or so progress, but right now we caught our fish, our better fish, back in these boat channels, these harbors, these back bays, these back little lagoons, whatever it might be. And yes, you're going to play bumper boats on a lake like Minnetonka, even lakes like Forest Lake, Waconia, White Bear, all these lakes that have these back little cuts and channels. The word's out, people are out there fishing. The angling pressure is higher than I've ever seen it, which is a good thing. A lot of people are out there catching fish and having fun. So be respectful. You know what, it doesn't hurt to say something to the person next to you. Hey, how you doing? How's the bite? Start a conversation. It's amazing. We had about, 20 boats at one point inside this small little spot yesterday. And it was kind of fun because most of the boats were jibber jabbering back and forth. Someone catch a nice fish, you'd hoot and holler and tell them good job. So you can have a good time and be social and talk to the boat next to you and have fun. So I encourage you to do that. How do we catch our fish? So back in these boat channels and back in these harbors, we were finding temperature as warm as 50, 51 degrees. Again, this is surface temp. You get down a few feet, it's a lot colder than that, but these surface temperatures warm up and these crappies come higher and they'll feed. Even in 18, 20 feet of water, which is some depths we caught our fish, we caught them only 5 feet down. I mean, these fish are coming up to that warm water. It feels good. They're chasing a number of different things. There's a bunch of factors that come into play, and you can catch these fish high in the water column. We also had spots where we had to get down to the fish. We got a good bite in 10 to 14 feet that we actually didn't fish floats, and we fished further down to get our better bites. So it does make a difference. Also comes into play, who's in your boat? What's the skill level? I had 2 of my kids with me yesterday, and one of my kids is just getting into this hardcore fishing stuff. So we had to find spots that are more conducive for him to catch fish. So we gravitated towards the float, put in a bobber on to catch our fish yesterday, and I think that was probably what worked for most people. So what are some things we use to catch fish? I'll start with what we use to catch those fish on weed lines, milfoil, main lake stuff, outside transition areas, 10 to 14 feet of water. We were using, I don't know if you can see these on the rods. Yep, that's a drop kick and that's a drop jig from Clam Outdoors. The same jig I took off my ice fishing rod, and yes, those are regular Mackie minnows. So we're using these. We got 3-4 pound test line, shorter ultralight rods, and you know, small ultralight reels, and we're literally jigging these over the side of the boat. We're pitching them. You can't cast these things a long ways. I mean, yesterday it wasn't too bad. We didn't have a ton of wind, and it will surprise you how far you can cast even a small little 32nd ounce tungsten jig if there's no wind. But we had to use these small offerings to get these fish to bite. They were really lethargic, and it did work. So we were casting these small little ice jigs with these rods yesterday to catch a bunch of fish. Some of our better fish came on these ice jigs. No bobber, and that's how we approach some of these fish. And 10 to 14 feet where there's still some milfoil, and some of these fish were staging on the mouths of some of these channels. All the fish weren't up shallow yet. We caught some fish doing that, and that'll be a good tactic that we'll use for the next, honestly, couple of weeks. And then you can go into the shallows with this exact same jig offering, throw a bobber on there and fish it. So it's pretty versatile. We didn't bobber fish these yesterday. We would pitch these and jig these over the side of the boat, these small tungsten ice jigs with Mackie minnows. But we caught a bunch of fish on those. What we did the most damage on, though, is when we got up into some of these boat channels and these harbors and these back lagoons, is float fishing. We were fishing these pegged floats. You can see that there. I've showed this multiple times. I'm just using a little balsa float of your choice that slides, and then I'm pegging it. You can see this. I'm pegging that with 2 split shot on both sides so this float can't move. And what that does is it gives me weight. I can cast that. It also keeps that float in the water, almost neutrally buoyant. So when that light crappie bites, so many times yesterday when we'd catch a crappie, that bobber wouldn't go down. It would bounce and it would move. Even when we're casting it at 12 feet of water, 4 feet down, you think that crappie would take it and move. No, they come up and they grab it and they sit with it and they swim with it in their mouth. And you watch that bobber bounce and move. I'm not using any live bait. A lot of guys were throwing minnows and stuff. We're fishing hair jigs. This is actually a jig that Jack tied. He made it himself. So you can see there's no weight impeding the movement of this bait anywhere along from that bobber all the way down. So that's why we say you watch that little light balsa float, because that fish comes and grabs this bait, and look at this line just comes up. That float's not sinking when that crappie bites this bait. It's twitching and it's moving. You got to pay attention to that float. I watched a lot of anglers yesterday on the same spot, you know, probably miss fish or not know they had fish because they're waiting for that bobber to go down. I would say 95% of the crappies I caught yesterday on a float, the bobber did not go down. It would bounce a little bit, it would twitch a little bit, or it would just literally start to move to the side where these fish are coming up. They're not aggressively crushing baits right now. They're coming up and they're eating it, and they're stalling out and they're moving, and then they spit it out if you don't set the hook. So you got to watch that bobber. Use a really tiny light float. Look how small that is. That bobber's that big. Tiny light float, barely staying afloat. So when I can see any movement when a crappie comes and takes those hair jigs. So we caught a lot of fish on this setup. 4 pound test line, ultralight or light action rod, 500 or 1000 series Shimano. Super nice. I had these rods built for me at Thorne Brothers. And again, similar set. This is what Jack caught his fish on, was of course the jigs he made, which was really cool to watch. He was pretty proud. And I was using a very similar setup. I had just a little lightning bug from Mr. Twister on there. Same concept, little tiny 1/32 or even 1/64 ounce hair jig. A little bit of hackle in there. And again, I'm using that same setup. I'm using that pegged tiny balsa float to catch my fish. And again, you're just watching that bobber. You can see I'm about 4 feet down and that thing's positioned. 2 little split shot on there. And you watch that bobber for the smallest movement and you catch that fish. I'm not looking for that bobber to go down. I'm not. A lot of anglers are watching their bobber, and I watch some guys fish next to us. You'd see their bobber go and just move, and they would go like this. Oh, it didn't go down, but that bobber's not going to go down. You got to pay attention to those subtle movements. And then Brody hammered down on the fish. He was using something a little different than us. He was just using a small little round ball jig head and a 1-inch teeny meeny twister tail, just a tiny little twister tail. This thing's just about a 1 1/4 inch offering. It looks just tiny in the water. and he was using that. Similar setup, 4-pound test line, ultralight rod. Again, same bobber. We all had those tied on. And there's a variation of types of bobbers. This is a mini stealth from Thill. I don't even think they're made anymore, which is frustrating. And I've answered a lot of questions recently. I got to probably stop pushing them because you can't find them anywhere. But there's a lot of brands out there that can fish in the same manner. You can use your bobber, whether it's an ice buster bobber or anything, and get that neutrally buoyant so that you can see when that fish takes the bait. It's super easy to detect that bite. And then again, for the most part, we're using small hair jigs, small jigs and plastics, and pay attention to when that fish comes up and takes that bait. Don't wait for that bobber to go all the way down. You're gonna miss a pile of fish. Pay attention for any movement. And again, we left the live bait at the bait store. A lot of guys were using minnows and they were catching fish. Great, if that's your confidence, then bring them. We have yet to bring live bait in the boat this year. We never touched a minnow or a maggot or a waxworm yesterday. We fished them all with plain hair jigs or tiny finesse plastics or tiny twister tails. So we expect things to warm up this week. It's gonna be in the mid 70s today, tomorrow, 60s all week. You're gonna see this crappie pattern continue to progress. We're gonna catch more fish. They're gonna be more aggressive. You're gonna catch them on more spots. Stay positive. The shore fishermen, anglers are starting to catch more fish. That's gonna pick up. I would say we're a little ahead of schedule, which is cool. We're excited. We can get out there and chase some fish and have a good time. So hopefully some of these tactics help you catch some fish. Stay mobile, stay moving, keep fishing. But when you get on a spot where you think there's fish, slow down. They're not taking casting and retrieving baits, twister tails and beetle spins, and they're not taking those yet. Slow down. Get the weight off your line so that hair jig can just fall down like this. Give that crappie a chance to come up, take the bait, and pay attention to every movement on your bobber or your rod tip, because it's probably a fish eating it. Set the hook, hook sets are free, catch some fish. We're gonna have a fish fry. We brought some fish home. Water's cool, fish taste great, so we did bring home some fish. Again, practice selective harvest. If you do catch a giant crappie or a trophy fish of that caliber, get some pictures, let it go, keep the fish, the smaller ones, for dinner, and enjoy it. So here's we go, kicking off the open water season. It's the first week of April. We'll catch us fish. We're having some fun. The guys in the river are catching some walleyes on pool 4 and pool 2. So if that's your thing too, go out there and get it. I have not done that yet. I am chasing panfish, and we'll chase panfish the next couple weeks. So get out there, have some fun, be safe, and again, happy Easter, everybody.